Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you real plain today, because I hear this question all the time. Steve, what can I say that makes him want me? And I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you, might shock you, might even make you uncomfortable, but truth usually does. The truth is, it ain't about saying something clever, sexy, or slick. It's about saying something that hits a man in his spirit. Because a man can be married, distracted, busy, or confused, but if you touch his mind and his peace, you will get his attention whether you meant to or not. Ladies and gentlemen, let me slow this thing down and really talk to you, because this first point right here is where everything starts. Words carry energy, not just meaning, energy. And too many people underestimate that. You think it's just a sentence. You think it's just a phrase. You think it's just a moment of conversation. But what you say, how you say it, and when you say it sends a signal straight into a man's mind and heart before he ever has time to think logically about it. A man feels words before he analyzes them. That's why one sentence from the right woman can stay with him all day, all night, even when he's sitting right next to someone else. See, men live in a world where they are constantly judged by performance. How much they make, how strong they are, how well they provide, how in control they appear. That pressure never turns off. So when a woman speaks, he isn't just hearing information. He's subconsciously asking, how does this make me feel about myself? And the energy behind your words answers that question instantly. If your words feel like pressure, expectation, or demand, his guard goes up. If your words feel like peace, understanding, and confidence, his guard comes down. And when a man's guard comes down, desire can walk right in. Most women think attraction is built by saying more, explaining more, clarifying more, reassuring more. But men don't connect through volume, they connect through vibration. That's why a short sentence spoken calmly can hit harder than a long emotional explanation. Energy doesn't come from length, it comes from intention. When you speak from a place of self-assurance instead of need, your words land differently. They don't sound like you're trying to get something from him. They sound like you're simply being who you are. A man can be distracted, he can be stressed, he can be committed elsewhere. But if your words carry the energy of stability and self-worth, they interrupt his emotional pattern. He notices. Not because you tried to be noticed, but because your energy doesn't match the noise he's used to. Chaos is loud, peace is quiet, and quiet things make men lean in. You see, desperation has a sound, insecurity has a tone, fear has a rhythm, and confidence is calm. Confidence doesn't rush, confidence doesn't argue, confidence doesn't over-explain. When a woman speaks with calm certainty, a man feels like he can breathe around her. And anything that makes a man feel relief in this world instantly becomes attractive to him. Words that carry power do try to convince. They don't try to impress. They don't try to seduce. They simply state truth with grace. When a woman says something that shows she's emotionally grounded, it forces a man to check himself. He starts asking, why does this feel different? And once a man starts asking himself questions, you've already entered his inner world. That's where attachment begins, not an attraction, Out in reflection. Men are not drawn to chaos, even though they sometimes live in it. They are drawn to clarity. When your words are clear and free of manipulation, they feel rare, and rarity is attractive. If your energy says, I'm okay with or without your validation, that hits a man in a place he doesn't talk about. Because now you're not another problem to solve. You're a presence to experience. Think about this. A man hears demands all day, from work, from family, from responsibilities. When he hears a woman speak without demanding, without pulling, without asking him to fill a void, it shifts something in him. He doesn't feel hunted. He feels chosen. And men respond better to being invited than being chased. Your words become powerful, and they are backed by inner alignment. You can't fake this energy. You can memorize lines, but if your spirit is anxious, he'll feel it. Energy always speaks louder than language. That's why the same words said by two different women can have completely different effects. One feels heavy, the other feels light. And men will always gravitate toward what feels lighter. When you speak from wholeness, your words don't cling, they float, they lead, they echo. A man will replay them in his head not because you asked him to, but because they made him feel something unfamiliar, calm curiosity instead of pressure. That curiosity is the beginning of desire, not lust. Desire, the kind that grows quietly. And let me tell you something important. When a man senses that a woman is not trying to take something from him, his time, his attention, reassurance, but is simply sharing space with him, it disarms him. He lowers his emotional defenses without realizing it. That's how words become doors instead of walls. So when I say words carry energy, I mean your inner state rides on every sentence you speak. If you are secure, your words will feel safe. If you are confident, your words will feel steady. And when a man feels steady around so he starts associating you with peace. And peace, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most addictive feelings a man can experience in this world. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you deeper into this second point, because this is where most women completely misunderstand men. Men do not respond the strongest to beauty, to sexuality, or even to attention. Those things may catch a man's eye. They do not hold his heart or his mind. What men respond to, what really moves them, is respect, peace, and admiration. And I'm not talking about flattery. I'm not talking about praise for the sake of getting something. I'm talking about a genuine way of speaking and being that makes a man feel valued without being controlled. You see, a man's greatest fear is not losing a woman. His greatest fear is losing his sense of self, losing respect, losing dignity, losing peace. A man can deal with a lot in life, but when he feels disrespected or emotionally drained, something inside him starts shutting down. That's why when a woman speaks in a way that honors who he is, instead of trying to manage who he should be, it hits him differently. He feels safe. And safety is not boring to a man. Safety, grounding. Most women think respect means silence or submission. That's not true. Respect is not shrinking yourself. Respect is not tolerating nonsense. Respect is how you speak when you're calm, how you listen without trying to fix, and how you allow a man to feel competent in your presence. Men want to feel like they matter. They want to feel like they are enough. And when a woman's words communicate that without her losing herself, it creates a powerful emotional bond. Peace is another thing men crave more than they admit. A man's life is full of problems he's expected to solve, pressure he's expected to carry, expectations he's expected to meet. When a woman speaks with emotional stability, not chaos, not drama, not emotional volatility, it feels like rest to him. And rest is rare. That's why a man will be drawn to a woman who doesn't turn every conversation into a battle or every feeling into a crisis. Now let me say this clearly. Peace does not mean pretending you don't have emotions. It means you know how to express them without attacking. It means you don't use your words as weapons. Men shut down when they feel attacked, but they open up when they feel understood. A woman who can say how she feels without blaming, without threatening, without forcing outcomes, that woman stands out immediately. Admiration is the third part of this triangle, and this one is misunderstood the most. Admiration is not worship. It's not putting a man on a pedestal. It's acknowledging effort, intention, and character when it's real. Men rarely hear appreciation unless they've fed something big, but when a woman notices the small things, the consistency, the discipline, the way he handles responsibility, it touches a part of him that doesn't get attention often. When a man feels admired, he feels seen. And when he feels seen, he wants to show up more, not because you asked him to, but because he wants to live up to how he's being viewed. That's masculine nature. Men risk to what they believe they are in your eyes. If your words suggest disappointment, they withdraw. If your words reflect belief, they lean in. Here's where timing and tone matter. You don't admire a man while asking him for something. That feels transactional. You admire him in moments where nothing is required. When your words aren't tied to an agenda, they feel pure. And purity in intention is something men are extremely sensitive to, even if they can't explain it. Now, let me connect this to reality. A man can be in a situation where his life feels heavy, responsibilities, commitments, expectations, and then he encounters a woman whose words don't add weight. Her presence doesn't feel like another obligation. Her voice doesn't feel like another demand. Instead, it feels like relief. Key emotional oxygen. That contrast is powerful, not because she tried to be different, but because she genuinely is. Men don't want to be fixed. They don't want to be lectured. They don't want to be constantly evaluated. They want to feel trusted. And when a woman speaks to a man as if she trusts his judgment, his instincts, his ability to handle his own life, something shifts inside him. Trust fades. L's like respect. Respect feels like admiration, and admiration fuels desire. A woman who respects herself naturally speaks in a way that commands respect from a man. She doesn't argue to be heard. She doesn't beg to be valued. Her words are measured. Her tone is steady. And because she's not chasing validation, her admiration feels genuine instead of needy. That's what makes it powerful. Let me tell you something else about men. When a man feels peace with a woman, he starts comparing that feeling to everything else in his life. Not consciously, emotionally, and emotions don't follow logic. They follow comfort. He'll notice that conversations with her feel lighter, that he doesn't have to perform, that he doesn't have to defend himself. That kind of emotional experience leaves a mark. Respect, peace, and admiration don't trap a man. They don't manipulate him. They simply allow him to be fully himself. And when a man feels fully himself around a woman, he becomes emotionally invested without realizing how it happened. He won't say it out loud. He might not even act on it. But internally, he knows something feels different. So when you speak, understand this. Your words can either challenge a man's ego or support his sense of identity. And men will always move toward the place where they feel respected, calm, and appreciated. Not because they're weak, but because they're human. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about this third point, because this is where attraction shifts from surface level interest into something much deeper. Emotional connection is not built by flirting alone. Flirting might open the door, but it doesn't keep a man inside the room. Emotional connection is built through timing, tone, and intention. And if you miss any one of those three, the message might be heard, but it won't be felt. Most people focus on what to say, but very few pay attention to when to say it. Timing is everything with a man. A man hears differently depending on his emotional state. Say the right thing at the wrong time, and it loses its power. Say a simple thing at the right time, and it can stay with him for years. Men are especially receptive when they feel calm, when they feel respected, and when they feel unpressured. That's when their emotional ears are open. That's when words don't feel like noise. They feel like meaning. Too many women speak when they are anxious, when they're unsure, when they want reassurance, and that anxiety leaks into the words, even if the words themselves sound reasonable. A man doesn't analyze the sentence. He absorbs the emotional tone behind it. If the tone carries urgency, he feels pressure. If the tone carries frustration, he feels conflict. If the tone carries calm clarity, he feels connection. Tone tells a man whether he should lean in or brace himself. Tone is not about softness alone. It's about steadiness. A steady tone says, I'm grounded. It says, I'm not here to pull you into something. You're free to choose. And freedom is extremely attractive to men. The moment a man feels like he's being emotionally cornered, his instincts push him to retreat. But when he feels like he's being emotionally welcomed, he relaxes. Relaxation opens the door to connection. Now let's talk about intention, because this is the part you cannot fake. Intention lives underneath every word. Are you speaking to get a result, or are you speaking to express truth? Men can sense when words are being used as tools instead of expressions. If your intention is to make him act, respond, or commit, he feels it. And once he feels that pull, he resists, not because he doesn't care, but because men protect their autonomy fiercely. When your intention is clean, when you're simply sharing a thought, a feeling, or a boundary without expectation, your words feel lighter. They don't carry hooks. They don't carry demands. And that's when they land the deepest. A man might not respond immediately. He might not even say much. But internally, something shifts because now he's not reacting. He's reflecting. Men fall emotionally in moments of reflection, not confrontation. They don't connect when they're being talked at. They connect when they're given space to feel. That's why emotional connection grows in silence just as much as in conversation. A woman who knows when to pause, when to stop talking, when to let a moment breathe, that woman creates emotional depth without effort. Another thing most women misunderstand is that emotional connection is not built by emotional intensity, crying, explaining, venting, and oversharing. She can feel like closeness, but to a man, it can feel overwhelming if it's not balanced with stability. Men bond through shared calm moments, shared laughter, shared understanding, not emotional overload. When your words are measured and intentional, they invite him into emotional safety. Let me tell you something important. A man opens up emotionally when he doesn't feel like his emotions will be used against him. That's why timing and tone matter so much. If every deep conversation turns into an evaluation of his actions or his feelings, he learns to stay guarded. But if he feels that he can speak without consequences, without judgment, without being rushed to a conclusion, he starts to reveal himself naturally. Connection also grows when a woman doesn't interrupt a man's emotional process. Men process internally before they speak. Silence does not mean indifference. It often means thought. When a woman respects that silence instead of filling it with questions or assumptions, she communicates emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is deeply attractive. The intention behind your words should be presence, not persuasion. When you are present, your words don't chase a reaction. They simply exist. And that presence creates intimacy. Men don't open up to people who want something from them. They open up to people who allow them to be themselves. Here's the quiet truth. A man remembers how a woman made him feel long after he forgets what she said. Did her voice feel calm? Did her timing feel considerate? Did her intention feel clean? Those emotional impressions act up over time. And slowly, without drama or force, a bond forms. Emotional connection grows when a man feels emotionally unburdened around you, when he doesn't have to perform, when he doesn't have to explain himself, when he doesn't feel rushed into defining things. And the way you speak, your timing, your tone, your intention, either creates that environment or destroys it. So understand this. You don't build connection by saying more. You build it by saying what matters, when it matters, in a way that feels safe. And when a man feels safe emotionally, he doesn't just listen, he attaches. Ladies and gentlemen, let me dive into this fourth point, because this is where women really start to misunderstand attraction. Scarcity and self-worth are not about playing games. They're not about pretending you don't care or acting cold. They're about understanding your value and demonstrating that value through your words, your actions, and your presence. Too many women think being available at all times makes a man want them more, but the truth is the opposite. A man respects and desires what he knows is not guaranteed, what he knows has boundaries, what he knows is held with dignity. And a woman shows self-worth. She sets a standard. And men are wired to respond to standards. See, scarcity isn't about withholding love or affection. It's about holding yourself with intentionality. It's about knowing that your time, your energy, and your attention are valuable. When a woman communicates that she has her own life, her own goals, her own joy, she creates magnetic energy. Men are truly drawn to energy that feels independent because it suggests strength, stability, and completeness. It's not arrogance, it's presence. It's a quiet, steady, undeniable signal that says, I am enough without you. And that statement, unspoken but deeply felt, can make a man reassess everything he thought he knew about you and about himself. Too many women chase. They overtext, overcall, explain. They bend over backwards to prove their worth, and in doing so, they unknowingly push men away because men are not motivated by desperation. They are motivated by value. When you're constantly available, you become a resource that can be taken for granted. But when you create space, when you allow him to wonder, when you set limits on your availability, you trigger a man's natural instinct to pursue. Scarcity works because it signals that your attention is precious and must be earned. And when attention is earned, it's respected, and respect fuels desire. Self-worth goes hand in hand with scarcity. Men notice when a woman knows what she deserves. She doesn't tolerate behavior that diminishes her. She doesn't settle for less than she is worth, and she doesn't beg for validation. Self-worth communicates through subtle cues, a calm refusal to accept disrespect, a quiet confidence in conversation, a refusal to compromise your integrity for temporary attention. These behaviors speak louder than words ever could. A man can see when a woman values herself, and he subconsciously understands that she will not settle for mediocrity. That recognition creates tension, curiosity, and attraction all at once. Now, this doesn't mean you close off emotionally. It doesn't mean you withhold kindness or intimacy. It means you choose carefully what you give, when, and to whom. Men are drawn to women who are selective because it signals discernment. It signals that their presence in your life is meaningful, not incidental. Scarcity, when coupled with self-worth, isn't a tactic. It's a reflection of who you are. And authenticity in that space is far more magnetic than any artificial game. Think about the psychology behind this. Humans naturally want what they cannot have easily. It's a principle that applies to many areas of life, but in relationships, it is amplified by emotional energy. When a woman is available all the time, it reduces the perceived value of her presence. When a woman demonstrates she has a fulfilling life independent of him. It elevates her presence in his mind. Scarcity is not about being cruel or distant. It's about demonstrating that your life is rich, full, and complete, and that he has the privilege of being a part of it, not the obligation. Self-worth also affects how a woman communicates. A woman who knows her value does not beg for answers, explanations, or AT&T. She communicates calmly, clearly, and confidently. She doesn't overtext. She doesn't overexplain. She doesn't chase after emotional validation. A man feels that confidence. He sees that she doesn't need him to complete her. And paradoxically, it makes him want to step up, to offer more, to show more interest, because he senses that she cannot be had easily, and his presence in her life, carries meaning. Another critical aspect is boundaries. Scarcity and self-worth are reflected in boundaries. Men are drawn to women who know where their lines are, who respect themselves enough to enforce them, and who expect to be treated accordingly. Boundaries are not about control. They are about self-respect. And self-respect, ladies and gentlemen, is attractive. When a woman communicates she will not tolerate certain behaviors. She is not pushing a man away. She is demonstrating that she values herself and will not settle for less. That creates an environment where a man is both challenged and inspired to rise to her standard. Emotional energy also plays a role here. A woman who values herself does not give emotional excess to anyone who does not reciprocate or respect it. She does not invest where it is wasted. And men notice this, even subconsciously. They recognize a woman who is emotionally grounded, who controls her energy, and who gives it purposefully. That energy signals maturity, stability, and depth, all traits that are incredibly magnetic to a man, even if he doesn't articulate why. It's important to note that scarcity and self-worth also create desire because they shift the balance of power. Men are wired to chase. They are wired to pursue. They feel attraction when there is a challenge, when there is a prize to be earned, when they feel needed but not entitled. If a woman is constantly available and over-communicating, she unintentionally removes the challenge and the excitement. But when she demonstrates self-worth and maintains her space, she not to. Rally becomes a prize, a woman whose presence is valued, whose attention is earned, and whose energy is respected. Ladies and gentlemen, scarcity, and self-worth are not manipulative tactics. They are reflections of personal integrity and inner strength. They communicate to a man, I have a life, I have value, and I know what I deserve. And a man who recognizes that will not only be drawn to her, he will respect her, pursue her, and think about her in ways that go beyond superficial attraction. He will recognize that being with her is a privilege, not a given, and that awareness fuels desire in a way that nothing else can. When a woman embodies scarcity and self-worth, she creates an irresistible presence. She does not compete for attention. She inspires it. She does not beg for commitment. She invites it. And men respond not because they are tricked or pressured, but because they are confronted with a woman who knows her value, honors herself, and communicates her energy with clarity. That is magnetic. That is powerful. That is how attraction works at the deepest level. Ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into this fifth and final point, because this one is often misunderstood. It is one of the most powerful tools a woman can have, the ability to speak in a way that makes a man reflect on himself, not chase validation. Too many women spend their time trying to convince a man of their worth, trying to get him to act, trying to prove that they are desirable or necessary in his life. But the truth is, the most magnetic women don't chase approval. They inspire introspection. They say things that make a man pause, think, and wonder. That wonder creates curiosity, and curiosity fuels desire. When a man begins to reflect, he is already emotionally invested, even if he doesn't say it out loud. Think about how men operate. Men are wired to respond to internal challenges more than external pressures. If you push, demand, or plead, he feels cornered and instinctively resty. But if your words make him stop and consider his own feelings, his own choices, his own life, he starts to engage mentally and emotionally. That engagement is far more powerful than any amount of flattery or flirtation. A man may ignore compliments, but he cannot ignore reflection. When your words create self-reflection, he becomes a participant in his own attraction to you. He's not being manipulated, he's being awakened to a truth he already feels but hasn't acknowledged. The key is subtlety. You don't lecture, you don't accuse, and you don't force realization. You speak from a place of calm clarity, of grounded confidence, of self-assuredness. A single sentence, carefully chosen, can make him question his priorities, his intentions, and his feelings. For example, something as simple as stating your expectations clearly, without anger or pleading, can make a man realize how much effort he is or isn't putting in. And when he realizes it himself, the impact is far greater than if you try to convince him or demand change. Men respond to challenge differently than women do. Women often think challenge means arguing or being confrontational, but true challenge, the kind that eats reflection, is quiet, measured, and grounded in self-respect. It's not about making a man feel bad. It's about presenting a mirror through your words. When a woman communicates clearly what she values, what she won't accept, and how she expects to be treated, she challenges a man to rise to that standard. And a man who respects himself will naturally want to meet it. That desire to rise, to lean with a woman's integrity, is more potent than any plea, persuasion, or manipulation. Another important aspect of this is that words that inspire reflection also communicate independence. Men are drawn to women who do not depend on their validation for self-worth. When you speak in a way that communicates that you are complete, whole, and secure in yourself, you force a man to look inward. He begins to ask, why am I drawn to her? What is it about her that feels different? That internal questioning is exactly what you want, because it shifts the dynamic. He's not chasing you for need. He's reflecting because he wants to understand why he's attracted to someone who carries such undeniable presence and strength. The way you structure your words is critical. Avoid trying to explain too much. Avoid trying to justify your feelings or your choices. A man doesn't need all the debt. To reflect, he only needs the essence of your perspective. A simple statement of confidence or boundary can trigger more thought than paragraphs of reasoning. For example, saying something like, "I know my worth and I won't settle for less than I deserve," does not insult or threaten him. It simply communicates your integrity. And when a man hears that, it makes him examine his own intentions and his own alignment with someone who values herself. Reflection is born from clarity, not chaos. Timing also plays a critical role in making a man reflect. You don't need to speak every thought immediately. Strategic pauses, intentional silence, and measured responses create space for him to process. If a woman rushes to fill EV, airy silence, to answer every question, to react to every message, she eliminates the opportunity for reflection. But when she speaks with intentionality, the man's mind works in the background. He starts replaying conversations, analyzing his actions, and considering the impact he has on you. That mental engagement, that self-reflection, builds emotional attachment faster than any external pursuit ever could. Emotional tone underpins all of this. A calm, confident tone makes the man feel your steadiness while simultaneously provoking his own self-assessment. Anxiety, pleading, or neediness in speech creates tension and resistance. Confidence, grounded in self-awareness, creates curiosity and introspection. The contrast between a woman who is secure and a man who may be uncertain or distracted is magnetic. He begins to examine himself because her energy naturally invites comparison. He asks internally, am I showing up? Am I present? Am I treating her with the respect she deserves? And that reflection leads him to act, not because you told him to, but because he wants to. It's also important to understand that words that provoke reflection carry permanence. Men may forget casual compliments or playful flirtation, but they rarely forget the woman who made them question themselves in a meaningful way. That's because introspection creates a deep emotional imprint. When a man reflects on his behavior, his intentions, and his emotions, he begins to invest mentally and emotionally. That investment becomes the foundation for desire, attraction, and deeper connection. Finally, the power of reflection lies in authenticity. You cannot fake it. A man will sense immediately if your words are manipulative or performative. But when you speak from truth, when your words come from a place of integrity, your presence becomes magnetic. He doesn't need to be persuaded. He needs to encounter your authenticity. And the reflection that emerges from your words is not just about what he thinks. It's about how he feels and how he evaluates himself in relation to a woman who is confident, whole, and unapologetically herself. When you master this, ladies and gentlemen, you create an environment where men are drawn to you not because you demanded it, not because you chased it, but because your words guided them to recognize what they already valued deep down. Reflection is the silent power that transforms attraction into desire, curiosity into pursuit, and awareness into emotional investment. And that ultimately is hoe. A woman can hold influence, command respect, and ignite longing in a way that is natural, powerful, and deeply lasting.